Habari za Subuhi. Good morning to everyone in Kenya and everywhere else, online as well as in person. It is a pleasure for me to be here, speaking from Johannesburg into Kenya and further afield. Thank you for that introduction. It's I'm going to talk about the values revolution, leading with integrity in a changing world, and how ethical leadership creates sustainable impact across people, purpose, process, and performance. So, although this is focused on ethics and governance, this is really an urgent call for values-based leadership. And when we're talking about values, ethics, values, and principles together form character and the character of a leader. And before I go any further, before you say, oh, this is not for me, I'm not a leader, yes, you are. We are all leaders. Leadership is all about self leadership, and self leadership begins and ends with intentional, personal, daily development. If you don't develop every single day, even a little, you're on a slippery slope. And then if you don't intentionally develop, you will never become a great leader. Now, not everybody wants to be a great leader, but they want to lead well in their sphere, whether it's in their family, in their community, in their company, in their university, as we're talking into a university, and even further afield, of course. But that is a choice. But that choice can only be made if your life and your leadership and your business and your social environment is based on a solid foundation, and that solid foundation has got to be values. Simple little values on ethics, principle, listening, forgiveness, restraint, respect, hope, connection, developing people, understanding people, and many, many more basic human values. So before I go any further, I want to take a little step back and talk a little bit about how I got into this whole values-based leadership scenario and became a global values-based leadership specialist, as is my wife. And we're only two of a handful of people in on the whole of the African continent who are global values-based leadership specialists. But it started for me. I was in the oil industry for 30 years, but I also have been a personal development freak, as some people call me. I call it enthusiast, but I'm quite happy because I see it as a compliment. I've done that since I was 17 years old, and that's quite a few years. And in 2012, as part of that journey, I joined the Maxwell leadership team. Now, those who don't know who John Maxwell is he's the number one leadership expert in the world and has written more than 120 books on the subject. So he kind of knows what he's talking about. An amazing gentleman. And he comes from a pastoral background as well. But in 2013, when we were in Orlando at our 6 monthly certification training, he asked for volunteers from his mentorship team to come and help start the transformation of an entire country. And he talked into that. And then Paul Martinelli, who was also instrumental in starting the Maxwell team, he said, we're going to go somewhere to do some things sometime with some people. And yet 150 of us threw our hat in the ring, and we went with them to the country of Guatemala. Now, Guatemala is a country of 14 million people with an average age of only 20. So you can imagine the problems and the challenges they had. But there, I had an experience that changed my life. See, I never hated my job in the oil industry. I found out when I started coaching in 2009 that I had been coaching for 25 years already. And I was one of the few experts in the world in what I did. But when that voice is in your ear all the time on one shoulder, there is more for you to do. Now, you can either ignore it or you eventually give into it. Because Les Brown, my friend and mentor, who said that leadership is failing around the world, also said that the richest place is the graveyard, not the oil fields in the Middle East or the gold mines in South Africa or even the stock exchange around the world. It's the graveyard because that's where people go with their inventions never invented, the songs never sung, the books never written. You can go on, but that's where people go who say, I'm going to do this tomorrow. So on the way home from Guatemala, John also said, as a quote, he said, once you have tasted significance, once you have really tasted significance, success will never be enough. And until I got to Guatemala, I had no idea what the difference was. between success and significance. I found it there. I experienced it. I saw it in the eyes of the people and I felt it. And success is for yourself, but significance is for other people. So helping other people. And that has nothing to do with the amount of money you've got, the skin color, your race, your religion, your ethical backgrounds, your environment, nothing. It has to do with you. When you start living from your heart rather than just your head, are you willing to share and help other people? I mean, it really is all that leadership is about, building relationships. Are you willing to build a relationship to make a difference in the lives of others? And I know when I'm talking to learned people and distinguished people, professors and doctors, a lot of them I heard and see that in the book as well, that are present online and in person, that you are indeed already making a huge difference and building the students to to become the leaders in the future of the people of tomorrow, the leaders of tomorrow. So we really appreciate you. But that is really, after that, we went in 2016 to do a similar trip, and 17,000 people were trained in Paraguay in a week. We learned from a few mistakes from the first one. Then my wife and I were invited to help a similar event in Ireland, Lift Ireland, leading Ireland's future together in 2018. And then when COVID happened, we went online and were part of the start of transformation of Lebanon, Bangladesh, and also in Pakistan, and of course, South and Southern Africa. We train facilitators of this powerful program online. So that gives you a little bit of an overview. And to give you some results, I heard just about 2 months ago that in Guatemala now 3 million people have gone and are still going through this process. In Paraguay, more than 1 million people have gone through this process. They've only got 7 million people, an average age of 21, so not much better. And thousands of people in Ireland have gone through this. So it is something that is developing because some people started taking action. It is the most powerful program. I tell people, when you actively get involved in it, this will change your life. So that gives you an idea why I'm so passionate when I speak about values and how we need to incorporate them in our lives. And I just mentioned that values, principle, and ethics are the character of the man or woman. And I can tell you that you might have heard it before. Character eats vision for breakfast. It's a wonderful saying. And also, but those without character, they actually might have a vision, but without that, it will fail sooner or later. And there's also a saying in organizations that they hire for skill and they fire for character. And that's not usually because they've got lots of it, but they've got a lack of it. So I will actually begin when we're talking about it, just to put it into context, with a story of a massive corporate scandal and a societal leadership failure, something that shows what happens when leadership lacks values. And of course, I better start sharing my slides then, which is helpful. Slideshow from the start. There we go. So you've already seen this and how ethical leadership creates sustainable impact, across people, purpose, process, and performance. So moving straight on to that disaster, the Steinhoff scandal, when leadership lacks values. Now, in 2017, the South African and international business communities were totally rocked by one of the biggest corporate scandals in African history. See, the collapse of Steinhoff International, a global retail holding company headquartered in Stellenbosch. Now, what happened? Well, if you don't know, Steinhoff was once seen as South Africa's answer to global retail giants like IKEA, and it was exposed for massive accounting fraud and financial misreporting amounting to a massive $7 billion. Not exactly small change. But his longtime CEO, Mark Jooste, had built a company image on ambition, global expansion, and profitability. Now, but behind the scenes, Steinhoff had been inflating profits, hiding losses, and manipulating financial statements to create a false picture of success. All in pursuit of growth at any cost. And of course, ethics and governance were nowhere to be seen. So, but when the truth actually came out, the company's shares plummeted over 95%, wiping out billions in shareholder values, as you can see on the top picture there. Pension funds, especially those of working class South Africans, lost vast portions of their savings. Employees, investors, and partners were absolutely devastated by the betrayal, and Joost resigned immediately and was later pursued by financial watchdogs and criminal investigators. Of course, that makes sense. Now, why does this matter? See, this scandal wasn't just a failure of accounting. It was a failure of leadership that cost livelihoods, shattered reputations, and was deeply rooted in a total lack of values. Because there was no integrity, no transparency, no accountability, and no stewardship of others' livelihoods. And when leaders prioritize image over integrity and growth over ethics, they don't just break rules, they break trust. And once trust is gone, leadership collapses from the inside out. Now, there's a question for you, and I've got a few questions along the way, and I hope you just humor me and participate. Who here actually believes trust in leadership has declined over the last decade? Now, if you're there in person, you can put up your hand, and if you're online, put a yes in the chat box, just to humor me a little. At least I know you're still listening. Now, the world is more connected and more scrutinized and more polarized than ever before. See, leadership is under the microscope, and quite rightly so, of course, especially after this happened. But there is a global trust decline. See, because why the world needs a new kind of leader, and it's because of that, because leadership trust is declining. We need a values revolution. So if we look at a global picture, in 2024, last year though, the Edelman Trust Barometer reported a significant decline in trust across major global institutions. Now, you might ask, what is the Edelman Trust Barometer all about? As I did when I first heard about it. Well, the Edelman Trust Barometer is a globally recognized annual research initiative designed to assess public trust in institutions such as government, business, media, and NGOs. Government is now distrusted in 17 out of 28 countries surveyed, including the US, Germany, and the UK. Media remains the least trusted institution globally with less than 50% trust. And I thought this was a lot lower. Maybe it is a lot lower now, but it should be. And it is distrusted in 15 of 28 countries, including the US, Japan, and the UK. So what about the decline in African trust when we talk globally and we're here in Africa? Before I go any further, I will also explain what an Afrobarometer is. See, I'm learning things all the time too. But an Afrobarometer is an independent Pan-African research network that provides data on African citizens' values, evaluations, and experiences. And indeed, Afrobarometer has become the global reference for high-quality data and analysis on African democracy, governance, economy, and society. So from last year, from the Afrobarometer, this came out. Across 39 African countries, only 37% of respondents said that they were fairly satisfied or very satisfied with democracy. And that's the lowest share for at least a decade. Support for democracy has declined, with only 66% preferring democracy over other forms of government. And that's again down from previous years. In South Africa, support for democracy has fallen 29 points to 43% over the past decade, and 2/3 of South Africans would be willing to give up elections if a non-elected government could provide security, housing, and jobs. And I would add to that probably food in the bellies as well, because hunger is also a disaster, especially across South Africa. But that's a whole different subject I could talk about for a day as well. But these statistics reveal a troubling erosion in trust in institutions, both globally and across Africa. See, the decline underscores critical need for leadership grounded in integrity, transparency, and accountability. Rebuilding trust requires a commitment to these core values and many other values apart from those. See, leadership is no longer about being in charge, it's about being in service to people, purpose, and future generations. And no doubt, values are the compass that will accomplish that. But it needs to start somewhere. So, leadership rooted in values. See, values are the roots of sustainable, ethical leadership. You'll hear me talk more about sustainability and about ethics, of course, and leadership, again, to remind you that we are all leaders. See, the need and importance of values as a foundation for great leadership and sustainability of that great leadership, once created, is absolutely clear. How that happens is through intentional, as a word again, intentional daily development. See, and becoming aware and getting to understand basic human values and incorporate them in our daily lives. Because without action, nothing changes. We know that. Les Brown said that if knowledge was power, every librarian would be skinny, rich, and happy. And I don't know if he was the original, but he makes a point. And as nowadays, everybody's got access to more knowledge than they can ever know what to do with. So that would apply to everybody. But it's knowledge acted upon is power. And if you wanted to become even more powerful, every day reevaluate what you've taken action on. 4 simple questions. What did I do well? What did I do badly? What should I change? And what should I never do again? That's a simple way to take action every day. So that's quite important. But what we're going to be really looking into is the 4 pillars of ethical leadership. See, what makes a leader truly great isn't power, position, or personality. It's principles, ethics, and values, which makes up the leader, a leader's character. See, in today's rapidly changing world where trust is fragile, uncertainty is constant, and leadership is often met with skepticism, we don't just need more leaders, we need better leaders. See, how some of them can still be called or call themselves leaders is beyond me, but don't get me started on that. See, better leadership starts with a foundation built not on charisma, but on character, values, ethics, and principles. See, that foundation is made up of 4 non-negotiable pillars, incorporating timeless principles that separate fleeting success from enduring significance. And as you can see there, these are the 4 pillars. The first one is ethics and integrity, which is talking about the inner compass. Then the second one is stewardship, talking about leadership as a sacred trust. Then we have the third one, accountability and transparency, which is the courage to be seen. And then the fourth one, participation, the power of collective wisdom. So together, these 4 pillars form the ethical framework for values-based leadership. So let's dive into them and discover how they will drive the values revolution. The first one is ethics and integrity. Now, ethics is all about principles guiding right behavior. Integrity is the unwavering alignment between values, words, and actions. See, that you heard about you need to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And that really incorporates that, that you are who you are every time. Ethical leadership is the foundation. It's about doing what's right even when no one is watching. And even or especially when doing right comes at a cost. See, it's easy to lead when everything goes well. But it's always known that real leadership reveals itself when a company is in trouble, when things are going badly, when there is a lot of stress and anxiety about meeting deadlines and all those kind of things, or when a company is failing or suffering one way or another. That's when real leadership reveals itself. And if there's no real leadership, then the company will continue to fail and probably stop existing. But without integrity, every other leadership action becomes hollow and simply meaningless. So ask yourself, as I said, we're all leaders, but ask yourself, if someone followed you around for a week, would your actions align with the values you say you believe in? Now, we will come back to it later because maybe you don't know the top values that are important to you that you would never compromise on. And it could be any values like honesty, trust, integrity, listening, respect, hope, forgiveness, restraint, all those kind of things. But which 3 are most important to you? But we'll come back to that. So we're going to go into a case study of integrity into action. And it's a story of a leader who chose integrity over profit. And that person is Strive Masiyiwa. He is the Zimbabwean-born founder and executive chairman of Econet Wireless. Now, in the late 90s, Strive Masiyiwa faced a moral and legal battle that would ultimately define his leadership legacy. See, after Econet Wireless, he applied for a license to operate a mobile telecommunication company in Zimbabwe. Now, at the time, the government tightly controlled the telecommunications sector and denied his application, despite legal provisions allowing private competition. So, Masiyiwa refused to bribe officials, even though he would have been the easiest and fastest way to get a license. His refusal to engage in corrupt practices cost him years of delays, mounting legal fees, and the loss of potential profit. But he stood firm on his values, which were honesty, rule of law, and fairness. So he took the Zimbabwean government to court, and after a 5-year legal battle, he won a historic ruling from the country's Supreme Court. The decision opened the telecommunications industry to private players and changed the face of mobile telecommunications in Zimbabwe. Now, Econet Wireless went on to become one of the most trusted and successful telecommunications company in Africa, expanding into multiple countries and impacting millions of lives. Today, Strive Masiyiwa is a celebrated African business leader, global philanthropist, and role model for ethical leadership. So what is the leadership lesson in this? Because every case study that I provide you, and I provide one for all 4 pillars, I also want to give you a leadership lesson from there. Excuse me. Well, Strive Masiyiwa's unwavering commitment to integrity not only earned public trust, but it built a company rooted on transparency, resilience, and service to others. So, another question for you: what are your personal non-negotiables? That lines will never cross. See, again, it talks into your basic human values that are your foundation. And again, I just keep coming back to that because if you're not sure yet what they are, I would like you to think into that before we get to the end. So, pillar 2 is the stewardship. Stewardship is caring for something entrusted to you, not owned by you. You are a steward of your organization's mission, your team's well-being, and your community's future. See, what this means is that leadership is not about holding the keys to a kingdom, it's tending the garden for those that come after you. See, stewardship shifts the mindset from ownership to responsibility. As a leader, you are entrusted with people, resources, and influences, not to exploit, but to cultivate, protect, and elevate. True leadership is not about taking credit, but about taking care. And as it says here, leadership is about tending what you've been entrusted with. And I hope that makes some sense to you too. See, I will share an example now of a leader prioritizing sustainability, legacy, and people over short-term goals. So it's a story about James Mwangi, the CEO of Equity Group Holdings in Kenya, building the equity bank for the people. See, when Dr. James Mwangi took over a struggling microfinance institution in the early 90s, then known as the Equity Building Society, it was on the brink of collapse. Most financial institutions at the time focused on serving the wealthy or urban elites, while millions of rural and low-income Kenyans were left unbanked. Now, instead of chasing quick profits through high-end clients, Dr. Mwangi made a bold and countercultural decision. He actually committed equity to becoming the bank for the people, especially low-income communities, small-scale farmers, and informal workers. See, his long-term vision included eliminating unnecessary barriers to banking access, reducing minimum balance requirements, investing in financial literacy and community education, but also developing affordable mobile and agent banking systems to reach remote regions. Now, when he reinvested heavily in digital infrastructure and staff training, even when short-term profits could have been maximized elsewhere, the bank focused on creating shared value, not just shareholder value. And it aligned commercial success with societal good. So, and here actually the photo shows Dr. James Mwangi being conferred with the Freedom of the City of London. Now, that's one of the world's oldest and most prestigious civic honors. And he deserved it. Well, his legacy was that Equity Bank grew to become the largest bank in Kenya by customer base and one of the most respected financial institutions on the continent. It played a key role in financial inclusion, lifting millions out of poverty. And Dr. Mwangi personally reinvested in education and scholarships, believing that equity in banking should lead to equity in opportunity. So the leadership lesson in this is that Dr. James Mwangi showed that legacy and sustainability are not just moral choices. They are strategic decisions that build trust, brand equity, and long-term prosperity. So we are talking legacy here as well. So what are you a steward of today, and how will you leave it better than you found it? Again, something to think into for both you online and actually the people in the audience. So we go to number 3, the pillar number 3, accountancy and transparency. See, accountability, I can't even read right sometimes. Accountability is about taking full responsibility for outcomes. And transparency is complete openness about processes and decisions. Leaders who actually embrace accountability build trust even through failure, as I will show you with the example. See, secrecy usually breeds suspicion, and openness and transparency often build loyalty. And I think that's fairly obvious to most people. See, accountability means owning results, not deflecting blame. Transparency invites trust by making your decisions visible and your intentions clear. See, together they form the backbone of credibility. And as it says here, visibility creates trust, accountability builds credibility. So, another question to think into: if people don't know what you're doing or why, how can they ever trust your leadership? That's something to think into as well. Now, next, I want to share a story of a company leader who publicly owned mistakes and won even more respect. And this is a powerful example of Michael Joseph, a leader who publicly owned a mistake and gained greater respect. He's the founder and CEO of Safaricom. I was thinking about Africa. Again, a company from Kenya, during its early rise and especially during the rollout of M-Pesa, one of the world's most successful mobile money platforms. Now, in the mid-2000s, as Safaricom grew rapidly and rolled out mobile money services through M-Pesa, the company faced major public backlash due to network failures, dropped calls, and service outages. Now, customers were frustrated. Media criticism was growing, and trust in the company was at risk. And instead of issuing a vague PR statement of deflecting blame, which is common in many corporate responses across the region and indeed across the world, Michael Joseph took full public responsibility. He held a press conference where he openly acknowledged the failures, explained what was causing them, and more importantly, he outlined Safaricom's plan to resolve the issues. He committed to investment in infrastructure and technical teams, and he personally apologized to customers, reinforcing that the company respected their time and loyalty. And he also launched Michael Joseph's hotline. This was a direct customer feedback line to his office, something unheard of at the time for a major CEO in Africa. Now, the result was that Safaricom's transparency and accountability built even deeper customer loyalty. Trust in Michael Joseph soared, with many viewing him as a leader who listens. M-Pesa became a global case study in financial inclusion and innovation because it was led by a team willing to admit when things went wrong and, equally important, fix them. And as a CEO, he took the company from 18,000 subscribers in 2000 to 17 million in 2010 when he retired from his position. And he finally resigned from the board of directors 2 years ago in 2023. So, what is the leadership lesson for this one, this case study? Now, Michael Joseph proved that owning mistakes transparently isn't weakness, it's actually leadership strength. His honesty combined with decisive action turned potential reputational risk into an enduring brand trust. So here we actually go and I want you to have a look of the difference between hidden and visible leadership. And this is fairly open. And as you can see, the green, I made them green because visible, transparent leadership is great. Hidden, secret leadership, I make it red because, of course, that's not so good. And if you look at a few of them, like, decision making, visible leadership is open, collaborative, and often explained. And hidden leadership is very secretive, behind closed doors, top down, little context shared. Communication style of visible leadership is honest, proactive, and two-way. And the hidden one is withheld, reactive, often one-directional. Now, trust building I want to mention as well. Again, you'll see this slide anyway. Trust building, the visible leadership builds credibility and psychological safety, and the hidden one breeds suspicion and fear. But also organizational impact further down. Visible one creates resilient, value-driven cultures, and the hidden one leads to toxic environments with high turnover. And the public perception, seen as authentic, ethical, and trustworthy, where the hidden one is viewed as manipulative, unapproachable, or trustworthy. And the crisis responders as well, with visible leadership, as you just saw, transparent, calm, and solution-focused. But if it is hidden, it is defensive, evasive, and often blame-oriented. So there you've got some differences between the two. Now, we come to the final pillar, and this is the pillar of participation. Participation is actually inviting diverse voices into leadership conversations. See, collaborative leadership leverages collective wisdom and empowers people to contribute meaningfully. See, great leaders don't speak the loudest, they listen the most. Participation is about inclusion, collaboration, and making space for diverse voices, especially the ones not often heard, especially those that are never heard. Bring them to the table. And as it says, true leadership invites contribution from all voices. That's why values-based leadership is such a great program, because everybody has a voice. When you create a culture where everyone feels valued, honored, and respected, you unlock innovation, commitment, and resilience. So together, these four pillars form the ethical framework for values-based leadership. And this is the ethical side of it. They are not optional. They are absolutely essential. And when they are practiced consistently, leadership becomes not just effective, but truly transformational. So we'll go to the next slide, where inclusive leadership and how diversity and inclusion drive performance. I know DEI has had a little bit of a bad rap because of the misunderstanding from America, but that is not what diversity and inclusion is all about. It is about learning about diversity, understanding diversity, and becoming inclusive of all those kind of things, which authentic participation includes empowering women, marginalized voices, ethnic minorities, the education system, strategic partnerships, and as people with titles often forget, those at the grassroots level, they must also be included. No person is an island. And if we ever want to achieve more and become sustainable in our performance, we must embrace diversity. We must become more inclusive. So we must ask better questions, so we can have better discussions and understand each other better. We might have heard from the late Stephen Covey, we try to understand before being understood. So, and that's important. So we must ensure our ethics, values, and principles align, of course. But for that to happen, we have a saying in our values-based leadership program, says transformation begins in me. That means that every individual must take responsibility to become more inclusive, as we are all human beings who deserve respect. And as my wife, Dr. Roberts, is one of the foremost diversity, equity, inclusion specialists in the world, she has a few quotes, but one of them is, at the level of respect, everyone is equal. So a powerful example, African example of an organization that has successfully harnessed collaboration for innovation and resilience is Rwanda's One Cow Per Poor Family program. It's called Gerinka. It was launched by the Rwandan government under the leadership of President Paul Kagame. Now, Gerinka is a national collaboration for grassroots transformation. See, after the 94 genocide, Rwanda faced immense poverty, hunger, and distress. Rebuilding required more than policy. It required a values-based, participatory, and innovative approach that empowered ordinary citizens. See, in response, the Rwandan government launched the Gerinka program, which was a bold initiative designed not only to address food insecurities, but also to develop community collaboration, social healing, and economic resilience. Now, how did the government develop those collaborations? Well, there was the collaboration between public sector and communities. The government provided cows to poor households, but recipients were required to give the first female calf to another vulnerable family, creating a living change of giving and mutual support. It's like paying it forward, really. Wonderful. There was also collaboration between local and international partners. NGOs, veterinary services, and agricultural experts collaborated to train families in animal care, crop fertilization, and income generation. And of course, there was a lot of citizen involvement where the program was locally administered with community leaders helping identify recipients and ensure fair participation. Now, the impact was that over 350,000 cows distributed, improving nutrition, incomes, and soil fertility. And there was a significant reduction in childhood malnutrition and rural poverty, which is huge, with malnutrition being huge in the total continent of Africa. It strengthened community cohesion and reconciliation, especially among previously divided groups. And it became a globally recognized model of inclusive, values-based rural development. So the leadership lesson for this is that the Gerinka program shows that when leadership invites citizens into collaborative action, innovation flourishes, not just in technology, but in human dignity, ownership, and long-term resilience. See, the audience challenge is for you is, where in your leadership could you open your circle wider and become more inclusive? So we've now I've taken you through the ethical leadership pillars as much as time allows. And ethical leadership creates sustainable impact across people, purpose, process, and performance. And using these 4 pillars. Now, of course, as you can see, there were just a revamp. There were the ethics and industry, ethics and integrity, stewardship, accountability, and transparency, as well as participation. Now, these 4 pillars work in all levels of society, and when they work together, I hope you can already see and agree with me that leadership becomes a force for lasting change, not temporary success. So, leading the values revolution has to start now. And I would like you to choose your top 3 values, those you would never compromise on. And if you don't know them yet, start thinking into them. But if you do, don't just think about them, write them down and carry the piece of paper with you everywhere. Read it many times every day until it becomes second nature. When somebody asks you, what are your top 3 values? You will never have to think about them again. So that's very important, because that's a foundation for your life, your business, your leadership development, and your social environment. And that doesn't mean that they will always stay the same, but that's the base foundation. They might change when circumstances change. So today we've seen how values and ethics, stewardship, accountability, and participation create the framework for powerful principled leadership. Which pillar, in your opinion, is the most lacking today? When we look at that, there must be one. But I also want to talk about taking this a little bit further and challenge you a little bit more, choose one of those pillars you will personally strengthen over the next 30 days. Just one, because mastery begins with focus. Small steps lead to big change. And to give you some support on that, here are some simple action steps for you to stay on track. Reflect daily. Practice small actions aligned with your chosen pillar and encourage others in your sphere to do the same. See, the ripple effect of one value-centered leader can transform organizations, communities, and even entire nations. So imagine a world where leadership means trust, it means service, and it means impact, where leaders inspire change and embody the future of leadership. Imagine that. Can you imagine that? Can you be that one? Will you be the one? See, because what will you do? Are you ready to commit to leadership with values? Are you ready to build a solid foundation for your life and become a positive role model to others in your family, your community, your university, in your organization, and even your country? Are you ready to throw your heart in the ring today? If you are, and you're online, please write in there, I am ready. And if you are in the physical presence, stand up. Please stand up. Show others that you are serious about making a difference, about not just becoming successful, but leading a life of significance, that you are going to be that leader that the world needs, that you are going to make a difference. If that is you, please stand up. And now give yourself, even if at home, if you said, I am ready, give yourself a round, and those around you, a round of applause, please. Because really, your legacy begins today. When you commit and become intentional, you will not just leave a legacy, but you will live one. So please, be the leader you wish you had. Thank you.